The final is going to emphasize the last chapters too. There's some review, but most of the final will be over the last 4 social emotional chapters, picking up things that we hadn't had already previously. Attachment. The idea of attachment is that you're bonded to something. You're attached to it. So if I said, oh, okay, I want everybody in this room to give me their phones, and you're going to put them up here, and I'm going to put them in a basket, and I'm going to start to swirl it around, lots of you would be all, and you'd be, I don't know if you've seen those games, like you go to an A's game, and they have the BART cars running around, and you're supposed to follow which one crosses the finish line first, or those something's under a hat, where you're going, you'd be all following your phone around because you're so attached to it. And it could be an abnormal attachment, that it's not normal to be so bonded to your phone that you couldn't possibly be without it for a certain amount of time. I think it's probably surpassed our keys. Used to be at keys. Oh my God, where are my keys? Now it's, where's my phone? I think you go, oh, I can get new keys. Well, everything this important's in that phone. And so attachment is this idea of bonding. When we're talking about infants, then we're looking at how do they form attachments to caregivers. Now, we addressed this a little bit already, that if I don't have a normalized attachment because somebody has failed to meet my emotional needs, then remember we talked about failure to thrive. We saw Jeannie, and she was, you couldn't have normalized attachment to an individual. You couldn't be bonded to something that you left in a basement. You wouldn't leave your phone in the basement. Well, where is it? My phone lives in the basement on a potty chair. You'd go, why do you have a phone? And so I have to be meeting that emotional need in order to develop a normalized attachment. So part of what we're going to talk about in attachment theory is that parents' relationship to the child, but then later it results in the child's relationship to other people in the world. So it's kind of a monkey see, monkey do. What I learned and how people relate to me develops a strategy in me and how I should pay attention and attach to stuff. So on page 216 is what is called secure, and then there's insecure attachment. Now, secure would be a normalized one, and insecure would be overly concerned or underly concerned about, in this case, children, but again, to use my words and analogy of your phone, some of us, we drop it, the screen breaks, you're like, I see people that are like, their screen is just like, and they're trying to, I'm not sure that's a proper attachment. You're not careful with your precious device. And some of us are overly concerned. I coated in an Armor All case that's so bulletproof and Kevlar, and I don't want to, and I can put it through the washing machine and it'll never get hurt. I'm really overly concerned or attached. So you have secure is the proper amount of engagement with the thing and concern, and then there's insecurely attached. There's patterns of how the parents are relating to the children. And this is all related to a famous experiment. This woman named Mary Ainsworth. And Mary Ainsworth is worth paying attention to because historically there are few women in the sciences that have made a tremendous impact. And so we should probably pay extra attention to those that did. You might have heard of Madame Curie. She discovered radiation and it killed her. But she was famous in the sense that she discovered that. And Mary Ainsworth, especially in social science, is a really significant figure. You've heard of Freud and Erikson. I mentioned that woman, Horney, way back when. but there's not a lot of females that we recognize in social science. She's one. She came up with a very famous experiment where she wanted to find out if you could diagnose attachment. That does a parent and a child have a normal secure level or an insecure level? So she set up this experiment called the strange situation. And so what was the strange situation? The strange situation was she had a room where a baby came into it with their mother. Now remember, Freud blamed mothers, so Ainsworth was no different. She blamed the mothers, so she was looking at that attachment and bond. Strange situation was a room full of toys, baby toys, appropriate for the age of the baby. And it could be a mobile infant. Mobile infants are ones that can crawl around, as opposed to ones that just lie there. And they brought the mother and child into the room with all the strange toys, and then the mother was told to sit in a chair, and then if the child was ready to separate from her and explore the room, she was able to encourage them. And so the idea is that the mother provides this safe port in which the child can explore from, check things out, and if I get overwhelmed by all these new toys or something in the environment, I can come back to that safe place for comfort. If you think about a safe port, I don't know if you've ever been in San Francisco, out by AT&T Park, there's the jetties and the boats and all those rich people's stuff. I was just in Jack London Square. Oakland is getting very gentrified. Jack London Square, I was there, and it used to be all rinky-dinky boats out there. Oh my God, there's big old yachts and Italian racing boats, and there's a whole different thing. But that, where all those fancy boats are, there's seawalls and protection so that that little boat can go out in the ocean. It could go through the Golden Gate. If the weather starts getting rough and the tiny ship is tossed, it can come back to this safe port. Same thing with the child. The idea is the child can go out and explore the toys. If it gets overwhelmed, it can come back. Have you ever seen Jack in the Box thing as a kid? And it goes ting, and there out comes Pennywise. Hi, kids. What? Those are the meanest toys in the world. Here's, I don't know how many cranks before hell breaks loose. Well, you gotta teach your child about the world, don't you? It's a dangerous, scary place. Might as well start in the toys. And so the child goes out there and goes, ping, or just a noisy musical device. A lot of those things are horrible. It's good to be an aunt or uncle or something like that, or grandparent, and go, here, I think your kid needs a drum set. It needs one of these, beep, beep, boop, beep, boop, and like, oh God, thanks. Anyway, the child goes out, pushes a button on the toy, it makes some shocking noise, or it does something I don't expect, and I go, and I can come back to this, in this case, the mother, the caregiver, and be calmed around it. And that then I see that you're getting overwhelmed. Or you start to stray too far, I will, as a parent, get up and bring you back to a closer location. There was also a strange woman that was in the room. So they said, here's another thing that's in the room. Not only are these toys, but there's this woman in here. And so the child can explore them and see how they respond. So this is the situation, strange situation. Brought the mother, brought the child in. Child gets to explore. The strange woman comes in. She sits in a chair. The child can go out and explore everything that's in the room. Because it's an experiment, at an exactly, precisely decided moment, the mother is told, get up and leave. Get up and leave the room. Leave the child there with the strange woman. At exactly this moment, the woman is told that she's supposed to leave her child. She gets up and leaves. And what Ainsworth was looking at, how the pattern of the child's response to the caregiver leaving And then also returning. That was equally important, the leaving and the returning. So, what she found was that in securely attached children, here's what happened. And I'll show you a video, whether today or maybe next time. Securely attached children, the mother brought in the child explored the environment. If the child got overwhelmed, the mother would calm it. If the child went up to the stranger, called over to the stranger, the mother would encourage them to explore, because if I really care about you, I wouldn't let any strangers in my world who could hurt you. Did you know that, and we'll talk about abuse in here coming up, that most victims of abuse where there crimes that happen to children are crimes of opportunity, somebody brought somebody into the child's world who is unsafe, who wasn't checked out or vetted. That's most of the cases of that. So, I wouldn't bring a strange child into this world. I wouldn't let somebody victimize you or be in the position to do it. So they encourage the child, it's okay to explore. Child checks back. This is okay? Yeah, it's okay. Oh, yeah, you can go touch that toy. You can do that. Can I put it in my mouth? It's okay. I wouldn't put anything in your room that's dirty. I have students up in the children's center that are working with kids, and the kids will get, oh, I have to clean your face, it's dirty. What? It's food. Why are you calling it dirt? What are you talking about there? Why would you feed me dirt? What is happening here? And so, anyway, the securely attached child, the mother's told at precisely a certain moment, leave the room. The mother gets up and leaves the room, and guess what happens? The securely attached child shows some distress. They get upset. This will be on the quiz. Shows some distress. Gets upset. It's normal to be upset when your people you care about leave. And they actually tried to crawl over to the direction where the mother left. The strange woman who had been in the room for a while is told, here's your response. Go up and try to comfort the child. And they were again looking at the pattern. How did the child respond to this strange person trying to meet their emotional needs, being responsive? Do they calm down? Do they get more upset? In the securely attached child, they show distress. If the adult figure tries to calm them down, they do calm down some, but they don't completely calm down. Then at a certain moment in time, the mother is told, return back to the room, come back into the room. And what they were looking for is the reunion. When the mother returned, how did the child respond? The securely attached child responded in this way. They were happy. They might have still been crying, but the mother that's securely bonded to her child would pick up the child, comfort it, and then immediately the child was ready, pretty close after the reunion, to explore the environment again. And this is how we get rid of separation anxiety. That the people we care about, we leave them in the presence of people we care about and that care for our child. And some of you are going to be ECE majors, and that's your job. You're a surrogate parent, and you're responsive to the child. I mean, you may be way more responsive than their parents are. You're responsive to the child. They separate. When the parent comes back, they might cry when they go off to class or be a little upset or mopey or sad a little bit, but then they get over it. They start to play with their friends. Parent leaves, comes back, sees that they were left with a safe caregiver, and you don't have to be afraid when your friends or people you care about are not right there with you. So that's a securely attached child. That was the response pattern. Everybody follow? Mother leaves, a little distress, comes back, calms down, explores the environment again because my safe port is here. And the other adult served as sort of a safe place for my emotions. Not to explore, I wasn't ready for that, but my emotions. The insecurely attached child. There was 2 children that appeared insecurely attached. And there was a pattern to that. One, in the case of the child that was insecurely attached, the mother was told exact same moment, leave. Same amount of time in the room, same stranger, same toys, but it was a little bit different. When the mother came into the room first with the child couldn't wait to get out of her hands. It was like, let me at the toys. No concern about what's there, what's over here, who's this strange lady. They'd crawl up in the strange lady's lap. Immediately, no checking back. It was like another thing in the environment to explore. When Ainsworth first saw this type of child, she thought, oh my gosh, these are the kids that are super securely attached because they're just ready to go, ready to explore. They don't need this safe port. This person must have socialized them so well that they're ready to go off and be in the world, even at a very young age. Here's the pattern of that insecurely attached child. Mother gets up and leaves. Kid doesn't even notice. It's like, oh, you left? They're there. There's no distress. There's no upset. Kids just exploring, doing whatever they want. Mother comes back. Hi, I'm here. I didn't notice you were gone. Now, again, that looks like super securely attached, but it wasn't. It was insecurely attached because later, when they put devices on the baby to monitor its heart rate and respiration when it was going around, it was always elevated. Its heart rate was high. Its respiration was high. It wasn't a calm baby that didn't need anybody. It was an anxious baby. And then when they looked at its engagement pattern with the toys and the adult that was in the room, it was very superficial. They didn't sit there and play with the toys for a long period of time. It was as if that child had ADHD and was going through the room doing threat assessment. Will this hurt me? 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 Why did they have that pattern? Well, that child had a parent who was, as Ainsworth called, an avoidant parent style or parent way of parenting. Avoidant meaning that they didn't really ever engage the child. The child is just something I have. I don't really care that it exists. It's here. Now, I'm going to relate this to some of the parents and parenting styles I've seen and parents' interactions with children that I've seen and that they don't really care. A kid is something you have. A lot of us get this idea at a certain age, you should have children. You should be in a relationship. You should be out of DVC. I don't know if anybody came down with stone tablets from some mountain that thou shalt be out of DVC at this day. Or that thou shalt have I never heard of those ones. But we get those ideas in our head. And so at a certain date, I should have children. And people have children. And I see the Kardashians, they got children. They name them after cities and colors. Well, how do you attach to Chicago? That's a big city. It's got a lot of parts that you don't want to attach to. And they bring them to Fashion Week, and the baby's sitting there going, wah, wah. This is what amazes me. People bring their kids to places where that kid shouldn't be, and they intrude that kid into all our other lives. Restaurants. But I'm supposed to have a kid. The kid is something I use to adorn myself. In the case of famous people, it's like a Birkin bag or Louis Vuitton shoes. I got one, and the kid's dressed in Christian Dior. Look at them. But I don't really care about the kid because as soon as there's a new bag or Louis Vuitton shoe that comes out, I'm going to go get those too. The kid is part of my pop culture. It's how I decorate myself. And the child, on the other hand, doesn't really, or gets this message very early on, there's nobody there for me. So I got to have my own back. I'm going to explore the world in my own way. And I'm going to be worried about it because the world is not a safe place for an infant without somebody supporting it. And that's why they're always anxious. So there's the avoidant parent style. I've seen this up at the Children's Center. The child does show some upset and distress. Maybe they're tired. And the child's going, and I see parents go, I don't have time for this. I gotta go. And they run out, and the kid's like, as opposed to what is the really important thing in this world? You decided to bring this thing into the world. You probably should invest in it. And that is, there is no class, I know this as a fact, at DVC that is all that important that you shouldn't quickly take care of your child's needs in the immediate moment. And so that's avoidant parenting interaction, and that leads to an insecure attachment. Not enough attachment. And this person later in life, somebody goes, do you love me? Well, I really, really like you. I really, 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 really like. But I don't know. I don't even know what that means. I'm gonna avoid interactions. And so that's one insecurely attached. Then the other insecurely attached, number 2, is where this is the pattern that they saw in the Ainsworth experiments of the strange situation. Mother brings in the child won't separate at all. They might even been told, encourage the child. The child just like gets upset if the mother tries to get them off them. They won't go explore, they just cling on to the parent. Stranger over there, they won't even engage with the stranger at all. They cling to the parent. Because it's an experiment, at a precise moment, the mother is told, separate from your child, leave the room. They literally have to peel the child off them. The child becomes hysterical, not distressed, hysterical. You know what? Only women can get hysterical. Did you know that? Because the word comes from uterus, and only women have uterus. Hysterectomy, have you ever heard of that, where the uterus is removed? Men can't get hysterical. So the child gets hysterical, crying, upset, screaming, pawing at the door from where the mother left, and then the mother's told to return. When the adult is told to come calm the child gets more upset. Doesn't calm down, gets more upset. Avoidant, no upset. Here, inconsolable, can't be calmed down. Child's crying and crying. Mother comes back. Child isn't comforted by the mother's return. And then this is the pattern. Rejects the parent. Like the parent goes to kiss them and they go like that, and push them away. Or are just like avoid any contact with there. That's the second type of insecure attachment. And that comes from parents who were what is called ambiguous. I better get the right term. They use this ambivalent. Ambivalent. I have no idea how to spell that. Ambivalent. Ambivalent means I'm unsure. I go, what do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to, I'm not sure. Where do you want to go? What movie? Oh, I don't know. Avengers? I don't know. Rampage? Oh, I'm not sure. That's ambivalence. When you say the parent is ambivalent, it's not about the child. It's about the parent's needs. The parent is the one who is concerned about themselves, not the child. So sometimes I'm overly attached with you when you have easily separated from me. And again, I've seen this. I'll describe this pattern at the Children's Center. Overly attached to the child at certain moments because I need somebody to love me. And at other times, I'm underly attached to the child. I'm too busy for this. And I've seen this where, again, very similar sometimes to avoidant, the child's upset, and they're going to be upset every time there's a separation. And I go, I don't have time for this, I have to go. And then other times, and this is the ambivalence, at other times, the child separates more easily. Perhaps their best friend is there in the preschool, goes, you're here, let's play. The child goes off. The child's separated on their own terms. The ambivalent parent's like not good with that. And I see kids playing, the parent's gonna leave, and the parent goes, oh, I'm gonna give you a kiss. And they're like kissing the kid and a hug goodbye. And the kid's like, like this, and they're like, oh, I love you so much, I can eat you up, oh, chicoo. And the kid's like, I'm not a baby. But it's about the needs of that parent, not the needs of the child. So sometimes they're not in tune with their own child. It's about their own needs. So if you look at the best strategy for that child who has an ambivalent parent, where the person's unpredictable, and this is true of any unpredictable person, what is my best strategy? I'm not going to leave you, because I don't know if you really need me or you don't need me. And so the best strategy for the child is to cling on, and that's what those insecurely attached children do. If you have an unpredictable person in the room, you're going to keep an eye on that unpredictable person. Like, oh, what does Joe do when he gets drunk? We never know what's going to happen at this party because you invited Joe. I'm going to make sure where Joe is at all times in my environment, whoever's the unpredictable individual. So anyway, these, and I'll ask you about these, the avoidant is where I avoid deep, meaningful contact with you and interactions, and the insecure that comes from ambivalent parents. Sometimes I'm there for you, sometimes I'm not there for you. And so then that is the response. What's amazing about Ainsworth's experiment is it's a way of diagnosing insecure or secure attachment. All you have to do is have the parents come into your office, and I've done this many times in the practice of therapy, come into the office, first time I met them, and I say, there's toys in this room, it's a new room, and I watch how they explore. And then I say, could you step out for a little bit so I can assess your child while they're here alone with me, and then see how the child responds. And you go, oh, that there's a normalized attachment, that they get a little upset, I can calm them some, and then the parent comes out and I go, now what is the issue? Maybe it's a developmental issue in this child. It isn't about the parents-child relationship. Right away, I could diagnose that. If I go, oh, the child showed no concern and no upset, then I go, oh, there's no concern and no upset. And if the child shows tremendous distress, I go, okay, here's what I'm doing. And then I could say, well, how do we try to repair in the insecure this abnormal relationship here socially and emotionally? Everybody kind of follow that? The stability of attachment, there's stages on 219, and it is stable unless somebody steps in, because most of us don't know any more than what we know. So our parents related it to us in a certain pattern. You'll see this generationally. Sometimes some parents smother you and they set all sorts of rules, and you go, oh my God, that was just so restrictive, my childhood, when I never got to do anything. And so when I have kids, they're going to run wild. They're going to be, I think I mentioned in here, free-range children, like running around on the fields, climbing buildings. Free range, go for it. Hatch some eggs. And so anyway, then I'm less restrictive. You see this generationally. This is where sociology, you see, oh, the 50s, everything was a certain way. Oh, the 60s, and then, and you get this restriction going back and forth pattern. Abnormal, the secure one would be, I don't know whether there's ever, in the 80s, those clothes were so good, music. You might have noticed this is totally aside, but this is how fixed you get in your behavior. That at about age 30, people have a really hard time receiving new information. And they get fixed with regard to their musical choices. And you'll then find, if you have like satellite radio or something, or Spotify or whatever, there's 80s music, and there's 70s music, and there's, because that's the best. And the noise, the rap, the whatever, turn that off. And the clothes people wear, I can't believe it. And then you get this generation gap where people get fixed. So we get fixed in lots of ways. One way of patterning is how I relate to people, and then that's how I think it's going to be or supposed to be related to. So be aware on 219, I will ask you lots of stuff about attachment. Ainsworth didn't just come up with her ideas all by herself. They came from influences, and one big influence on her was this guy named Harlow and his monkeys. And again, nobody lets me experiment with babies, so he experimented with monkeys. Monkeys have 99 point something of the same genetics as you. Their primates require bonding and attachment. They have a long period of childhood, and we have the longest period of childhood because our brains have to develop to such a sophisticated level. It involves a lot of someone nurturing me. So Harlow, what he does with monkeys is he proves that there's something called love and attention. How did he do that? He had wire monkeys and cloth monkeys. Maybe some of you in psychology classes have heard of this. He had some that were made of wire and some that were made of fuzzy, nice lambskin cloth. They were all fake monkeys. And the one that was made of wire had food. It could provide food for the little baby monkey. They then introduced real baby monkeys, just hatched. And they put the little baby monkeys in with these wire and cloth monkeys. Harlow predicted, this was his theory. This is why theories are important to have, that are testable. His theory was that the baby monkeys would spend all the time getting the food. I put food on your table, I put a roof over your head. Well, why wouldn't you want to spend time with me? And that was his theory. But in reality, the little baby monkeys spent almost no time with the cloth monkey, or the wire monkey, just to get fed, and almost all of their day clinging to the nice fuzzy cloth monkey. Harlow then said, whoa, look, there's something more comfort that is necessary. Then he comes up with a way to scare the monkeys. So he takes and makes a mechanical mean monster, and this mean monster is probably was Pennywise, and goes, hi, baby. And so this mean monster comes into the room and goes, ah, and scares the baby. And what does the baby do? Where does the baby go? It runs to this one, not the milk one. It runs to the cloth one to seek out comfort. So this was the original Harlow experiment about bonding and attachment. What does that mean? What does it mean to be attached to something? What is necessary to cause attachment? Then he also did stuff with deprivation, and we saw the story about Genie with the deprivation, and he had monkeys that were raised all by themselves with nothing. And he looked at their response pattern to the scary thing. And what did they do? They curled up in the corner in the fetal position, which is like an infant. I've seen full-grown adults curled up in the corner because of all the assaults of life and their mental health issues, curled up in the corner, sucking their thumb, unresponsive to anything, because they've had continuous monsters and nobody bonded to them. And so that's the only given response to the situation. You saw Jeannie, her last assault, she became silent again. Remember, they said this is the last time she was signing, the last time she was viewed as interacting with anybody. So be aware of that on 221, the Harlow stuff. And then on page 225 is what I'm talking about, deprivation. So when attachment fails and the child has social deprivation, we saw the worst kind there with Jeannie. And the whole point of this is, and this is the generational stuff about my attachment, is if you don't attach with me, I don't know how to attach later in life. Jeannie, I had mentioned this, was in the basement on a toilet seat. Nobody bonded with her. And then you saw later in life, everybody said, oh, she had these qualities that made you want to take care of her. But nobody did, because she didn't do or have the skills of a two-way interaction with people. I've worked with a lot of children that have attachment disorders, and here's what will happen. You can be, as an adult, focusing all your attention on that child. There might be other adults and other children in the room. Are they satisfied with that attention that you're giving to that child in the moment? No. They notice all the other children who are not an adults paying attention to me. How do I get their attention? Well, the quickest way to get it is cause a disruption, and they go, and they're like an emotional black hole. Not enough attention. They can suck in all gravity into that hole, because I've never received anything. So anyway, be aware of that deprivation stuff on 225 where it fails. Yes.
What age do they would you see that in a 7-year-old?
Well, like we're kind of saying with language, and I was saying with the physical motor development in Genie, that your brain's plastic up into that 8 and 11 age range. So whatever experience, whether it's social emotional, whether it's physical, whether it's cognitive, I can make up for some of that. I can compensate. I could be the surrogate parent and help you learn about attachment. It'll take me a long time because I have to overcome all the experiences you had. Nobody was there for you. I'm there for you, I'm there for you, I'm there for you, I'm there for you. And I have to say that and present that message over and over with my physicalness, my emotionalness to be bonding with you, because you're gonna test it, kind of when we were talking about the house tree person, you're gonna test and test and test and test and test and test, and the adult who's trying to fix this situation has to be there. That's why I tell my students that are up in the lab school, you have to be on time, there all the time. Because you have a classroom full of children. Most are securely attached. They don't care whether you're there or not. They're okay with that. They'll be able to figure out another adult. But there are some children in that room, statistically, who have insecure attachment. And the only way you can overcome that is to be consistently a force in their life, always there. Otherwise, you're just proving their theory. Piaget said children are little scientists. If all the previous adults in my life were not significantly there for me, you just prove my theory by being late to whatever it is, coming into lab, being with the children. And so consistency is something that you would have to overcome. Once I get to here, then I'm pretty much fixed. And intellectually, you might say, oh yeah, I have trouble with relationships. And here's what I do wrong. I push people away as soon as they get close. But how do you change that? I said before, if you've had people in your life and broken up a relationship because somebody is too nice to you, what? Huh? What do you have to do? Stress yourself and go, I like boring. And then continue to be in a situation where you're stressed. Don't you want to yell at me? Don't you want to put me down? Because that's normal. That's what people back here did. Here's why I'm not taking care of you. You're a little right? I told you why I didn't like you. And so then if I get past that, you're looking at different mental health disorders and personality disorders if I don't do something about that attachment. And then this brings us to the horrific stuff on 228, which is about abuse. And obviously you're not taking care of something, you're abusing it, then you're not attached to it, so you probably have a very insecure level of attachment to anything if you can do this to a child. Now, the interesting thing about abuse is that if you are what is called a mandated reporter, and a mandated reporter is anybody who is of a professional level of understanding of child development in children, you are required by law to report and I emphasize this, suspected abuse. If you do not report it, and you are a mandated reporter, and who's a mandated reporter? Police officers, teachers, child care workers, dentists, nurses, there's firefighters, there's thousands and thousands of different categories of mandated reporters. Anybody who come in contact with children at a professional level and aware, then you're a mandated reporter. If you do not report the suspected abuse or avoid a situation where someone you suspect would abuse to be in the presence of children, a mandated by reporter, it's a misdemeanor, punishable by, I don't forget, 6 months in jail. Now think about this. Most of those occupations I mentioned, if you have a misdemeanor record, you can't be a teacher. Think about this, you people who might have a DUI or something. Guess what? You can't work in this field of ECE. You have to get it expunged somehow, because you have to check that box, and it's like, I don't know if I want somebody who has a conviction on their record. And so if you're a mandated reporter, you don't report suspected abuse, and it has to be you. Can't tell your boss. Has to be you. You have to contact Child Protective Services. If you don't report that, then you can be convicted of a misdemeanor, go to jail, and you lose your job. So it's a huge thing over the heads of all mandated reporters and most professionals who come in contact with children. Why have we decided? We've decided that this is such a horrendous act, abusing children, that we're basically going to throw all our laws out. Because every other law on the books with regard to criminal behavior, you are innocent until proven guilty. The state has to prove that you did it. And remember that word, reasonable doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt. If you can come up with another explanation, lots of you have seen all these crime shows, another explanation that reasonably could have happened, then the jury or the judge must take that other reasonable explanation. OJ didn't do it. That was the reasonable explanation. Colombian people came in there and did this. I didn't do it. How could I do it? I wasn't there. And that was a reasonable, and the facts led to that possible conclusion, innocent. The state has the burden to convict you. Guess what? We've said this is so awful, this is the one thing that we're going to go, look, you must report, and if you don't do it, they're suspected abuse, potential suspected, a belief that this person, individual, could harm children. You must report it. Nothing else, nothing else. So this is a huge, huge deal with regard to mandated reporter. I'm going to go through the different types of abuse in a second, but I want to explain how I've done this with clients, because it's tricky. The idea of a therapist and a client, one would think that this is a bond between two people, that as a therapist, you tell a client, guess what? Everything that we talk about here can stay here. I don't have to go outside of here. So you can tell me your feelings and your experiences and all that stuff, and I do not need to disclose that. That's the way it used to be. It used to be that a therapist and client's relationship was right there with a priest and a confessor, a lawyer and a client, a mullah and whoever they're engaging with. And you did not have to tell anyone. A husband and a wife. This is why the Marriage Equality Act was so important, because a husband and a wife never have to testify against each other. And then that then discriminated against all the people who were just a husband and a husband or a wife and a wife. that you didn't have that equal protection under the law, and that's why it got thrown out. Does everybody follow? So those were the only relationships. It used to be the therapist and client relationship was just like that. Then at UC Berkeley, they have a counseling center. And at UC Berkeley, at the counseling center in the 70s, there was this guy getting therapy. It was called the Tarasov case. He was getting therapy, and in the therapy, he said, you know what? I'm having feelings or ideas about killing my girlfriend. And the therapist said, oh, interesting, but our time is up. Come back next week, and we'll finish talking about your feelings. Well, between that session and the next session that was scheduled, he killed his girlfriend. Well, the idea was the therapist could not disclose that because this is right there, unbreakable bond. Well, guess what? UC Berkeley is a state thing, just like DVC is a state-funded thing, and the family of the victim sued UC, which sued the state, and got millions of dollars for wrongful death. UC Berkeley said, no way, never again. And the state said, no way, never again, that this relationship, if you believe the person is unsafe to themselves or others, you must break that bond and tell somebody about it. Which then made therapy really hard. We're going to talk about adolescence in here. We're going to get to that. Adolescents think you are in league with their parents to try to extract information to further ruin their life. That as a therapist working with adolescents, you're like, no, you're my client. I'm not going to tell anybody anything. Oh, really? That's not what all the adults in my world have ever done. And then you have to come along and say, yeah, but, well, I won't tell them anything, but if you're unsafe with yourself or somebody else, I have to tell them. And it made this relationship harder. Oh, I'm having these feelings. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I thought about doing this. And you go, Now, you might be psychology majors, and you'll find that hopefully in the future, if you become a therapist, you say this up front. You don't wait until something happens in therapy and go, wait a second, you're gonna do what? I gotta tell somebody, because that's completely destroyed. If I tell you, and this is what you have to do now, if I tell you going into the therapy situation, guess what? If this comes up, I'm going to have to get more help. Now my job is to help you contain your feelings, your thoughts, your experiences, and work on them. But if something comes up around this, I'm going to have to get more help for me. And I can't prove to you that I can keep you safe if I'm not able to make sure that we are safe. Does everybody follow that? That's why when kids will be hitting me, I have to hold their hands and restrain them and go, you know what? I have to prove to you that you can't hurt me to prove to you that I can help you. And so, anyway, I remember in the specific case of working with this client, in the therapy, she said she had done something of the physical abuse nature. And I said, I got to report this. And she goes, no, oh no. And I said, we have a choice. Because I'm a mandated reporter, I must report this. We have a choice. You can either report yourself or I can report you. If you report yourself, Child Protective Services will probably go easier on you. They'll allow you to figure out where you want to place your child. Do you want to place it with your aunt, your uncle, your sister, or whatever it is, grandma, neighbor? If I report you, Child Protective Services is going to send out the sheriff or the police. They're going to take your child and they'll place them in a foster care setting. And it could be any foster care setting that's open. So here's your choice. You report yourself, say that I'm in therapy right now, this came up, I was overwhelmed, I'm here with my therapist, and I'm admitting to you that I did this. And then you can say, here's the phone, and I'll get on and I'll talk to Child Protective Services. So anyway, she decided to do that and report herself, and it was just, as I sort of predicted, she was able to have her mother come over and take the child, and the child stay with the child until then. So, with regard to specific abuse, there's basically 4 kinds. There's physical abuse, which is obvious. There's obvious markers there. And so for a mandated reporter, if there's bruises, there's odd rashes, there's broken bones, there's something that physically shows that the child's been abused, or the child's reporting that this is happening at home, then it's a pretty easy one to be able to distinguish from normal bumps and bruises. Again, you as a mandated reporter and a therapist or a teacher or whoever it is working with a child that has a big black eye, you go, how did this happen? Now, of course, if they're an infant, then it's harder to justify how this happened, and then you'll have to talk to the parents, how did this happen, and then get some collaborative stuff and go, for yourself, judge that, this was indeed an accident. I remember there was a child, and she had a big black eye, and she was in the preschool, and I go, Malika, what happened? And she goes, I was on a hoppity-hopping in the garage. And you know what a hoppity-hop is? Like those rubber balls with the handle. And then I go, what happened? And she goes, I was hopping, and then boom, I was and I hit my face. And then, of course, somebody followed up with the parent. What happened? Hoppity-hop in the garage. Oh, okay. That's explainable. Maybe we should be more supervised. Maybe we should put the pad down in the garage, come up with some ways to wear a helmet while you're on a hoppity-hop, I don't know. But anyway, you have to check it out. The second listed abuse, and this is pretty easy to be able to see, is neglect. And neglect is that the child is dirty, the child's unfed. If you do a home visit, I'm going to show you a video, not today, next time, that a home visit, you'll see that the house is unclean, that there's all sorts of markers for neglect. And again, this is, it's beyond poverty, that there's food, all right, but the child isn't being given the food. The food for money is being spent on something else, meth or something, some sort of neglect is occurring there that isn't just we're a very poor family and we're hungry. It's that this child specifically isn't receiving something that's available there. And then there's sexual abuse, and with regard to sexual abuse, it's obvious markers with regard to a child or infant, and then there's physical things, and then there's also an awareness that the child has awareness that goes way beyond their age, that they shouldn't know about these things, or they shouldn't be able to describe different things that they've seen or witnessed in the household. So there's sexual abuse. And then the final one, which is really, really hard to diagnose because there's no external markers. Some of you could have suffered this. Some of you could be suffering this. Is emotional abuse. And this is where I have deliberately degraded your sense of self for either my own purposes to make myself feel better or to try to control you. I will say this with regard to physical abuse, and this is hearkening back way chapter 1. If I go, don't run in the street. Okay, that's a lesson learned. Don't run in the street. Okay, that's emphasizing your lesson. I've told you never. Now, if 1 is a lesson, 2 is a really good lesson, and 3 is abuse, then 1 is abuse. It's just degrees of abuse. But in the eyes of the law, that's why I spanked them. Their butt is red. They ran in the street. They ate a Lego. Then, in the case of emotional abuse, I told you to pick up the toys, you little you can't do anything right. What is wrong with you? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm affixing labels on you that are degrading, and it's continuous. You can't do, why can't you listen? And it's continuous emotional. Internal scars, but very difficult to see in the moment and make a case for. So just be aware of those. Causes of neglect and abuse on 230. Of course, in lower socioeconomic groups, there are higher levels in people in poverty. Why? Because there's more stress associated with that. Any questions about the abuse stuff? On 233, I know we talked a bit about this because it was in previous chapters, is autism. And in the case of autism, again, it's delays in many areas, but it's primarily social language delays. So there's limited interaction there. I know I mentioned a little bit before with regard to brain stuff. Area that has to do with generating fear, there's more cells. Areas that have to do with social mirroring, there's less cells statistically there than the average person. Characteristics, again, you'll see children with autism are lack of eye contact, lack of words. There'll be self-stim flapping. Sometimes they'll flap their arms. They'll do other self-stimulatory stuff. Why do they do self-stimulatory stuff where they'll flap their arms and go like this? Because I'm not receiving enough social language stimulation. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody who is blind. They'll rock, famous people, Stevie Wonder. When he plays, he's like rocking back and forth like this. It's much more exaggerated than a person who isn't visually impaired. Why? Because I need that self-stimulation in order for my brain to be aware that I am in the world. You need social. We're social creatures. Some people with autism will do self-hurtful behaviors, and so they'll bite themselves, they'll do head banging. Why would I do that? Doesn't make any sense. But if I'm not getting enough, you're in the world, you're in the world, you're alive, now I know I'm alive. All the other stuff where people give you labels, you're Paul, you're this, you're that, you're a teacher, those are labels that tell me I'm in the world. But if I have nothing coming that I can register as that I exist, then that makes sense to some extent. What's going on? And also, that's a self-stimulatory behavior, and also provides deep pressure, which calms their nervous system a lot of times. So those are some of the characteristics. Causes of autism, as I said, there's some brain stuff. There's some genetic stuff going on with regard to it. It's a combination of genetic and environmental factors. They found some specific genes. What are the environmental factors? Not so clear. Autism diagnostic rates, I think I just saw 1 in 40. A few years ago was 1 in 1,000. It's just, now the question would be, and this is true of all mental health disorders, maybe I'm just diagnosing it more. Maybe I'm seeing people who are just oddball, now they're autistic. People who are eccentric, now they're autistic. And so more people are getting put into a category because there's more awareness around it. The environmental factors, I don't know. I know this was in some of your book, that they've tested pregnant women, and there's like 1,000, on the average, 1,000 plus different potentially genetic mutating carcinogenic stuff in your bloodstream. The plastic bottles, the air conditioning units, the whatever it is that's pumping out of Shell over in Martinez. oh, we just burned off some extra whatever. Oh, really? And so all this stuff is in and around us, the electromagnetic radiation coming from your cell phones and all that stuff. So something is contributing to it. When I say the genetic part, there's certain areas. Silicon Valley is a area where there's a much higher level of autism. And one of the things, I know I mentioned, there used to be this diagnostic condition called Asperger's, where the person is very verbal, but they tend to talk about things they're only interested in. That if I have a certain level percentage of genetics, I can be a functional Asperger's person. I know all about Apple OS. I have a friend who's a maintenance, he's like the building engineer for the Apple farm or whatever they call it over there. And there's a guy that's in a room. All the walls are covered with aluminum foil. He sits in the room, almost dark, just with his terminal, writing code in a diaper. But he's coming out with a new OS for the, I had read that the new Apple phone, they're working on a gyroscopic thing so that when they drop it, it always lands on its back and never breaks the screen. They're working, Samsung's working on a folding screen. What? A glass screen that folds? Inconceivable, but poop. And that person is Asperger's. Well, guess what? I'm probably making 7 figures doing this. That can make me more attractive to people than if I was just running around writing code. And so the person who is Asperger's, who socially might have a lot of trouble finding people to have relationships in the world because I'm wealthy. I remember I was seeing something about Bill Gates, and Bill Gates was talking about what were the problems with the poor people in the world, and he was in India, and at this conference in India. And in India, there is a part of the population born into a certain caste system called the untouchables. Think about that. You don't touch them. And so there's untouchable people, and they live in filth and poverty in graveyards, and you don't touch them. Their only role in society is to earn things that someone might give them, but don't touch them while you give it to them. And they asked Bill Gates, how do we bring the third and fourth world? We're the first world, that's why we have all these phones and airplanes and stuff. We're the first world. How do you bring the third and fourth world up to the first world? And he said, get them connected to the internet. And I heard that and thought, what about food? What about food? And so I can be a person who's functional. I have great ideas in a certain area. I then have children, and the children have a more extreme level of autism and are not able to really function independently. So anyway, that's one of the genetic, there's a cluster, that's the word I'm looking for, in Silicon Valley, a cluster of autism. All right, I will see you on